American society is facing greater pressures from the left to redefine masculinity. A new movie just out called 12 Strong received some criticism from journalist Peter Maas, who tweeted, "It's time to wage war against war movies that glorify outdated models of masculinity." And on campus at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, a student-led project is targeting culturally defined and toxic masculinity in hopes of reducing sexual violence on campus. Well, joining us now to talk about this and other developments on some American college campuses is Hannah Scherlacher, program manager and opinion writer at Campus Reform. Good to see you again, Hannah. So tell us more about this redefining of masculinity at the University of Tennessee.
So this student group to deconstruct masculinity is just the latest example of the war on masculinity that we see all the time at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform on college campuses all over. Duke University this semester is launching a 9-week program dedicated to destabilizing toxic masculinity on campus. And we see hundreds and thousands of dollars, student fee dollars and taxpayer dollars poured into courses, workshops, and programs aimed to strip men of their masculinity.
And these aren't liberal campuses. I mean, Duke and also Knoxville, University of Tennessee. I mean, you'd expect them maybe at Michigan, Ohio State, Madison, Wisconsin.
It's just absurd. The same movement that seeks to promote equality and empowerment for women is the same group that is telling men that the very core of their identity is flawed. Men and women were created differently with complementing different features and gender roles. This should be embraced. We shouldn't be seeing one gender as the enemy and one as the positive one. This is a failure in society to treat it as such. You know, a functioning and healthy society embraces the difference in gender roles. College campuses need to stop this anti-male rhetoric, or we can only expect a society where we see more broken homes and broken families.
And as people are mourning and dealing with tragedy, I know last November, after that Texas church shooting, a professor at Kutztown University blamed toxic masculinity, not mental instability, for that massacre. So why this cultural war on men being men? Your thoughts?
Well, lamenting toxic masculinity is not empowering for women. It's a way for some women to blame all men for the mistakes of a few. There is nothing flawed about the core and identity of men. You know, denying masculinity and denying manhood deprives men of their unique role as protectors and providers in society. Without that, it leaves men out in the cold questioning, who am I? We need to stop stripping men of their identity and start embracing the differences between men and women. This has to start on our college campuses if we want to see a productive and functioning society in the future.
Hannah, the cultural war is also against women who take a stance for values, and more recently, those who march for life. Tell us about that.
So a professor at the New School sent out a series of tweets essentially telling all women who attended the March for Life to sit down and shut up. This is the opposite of women's empowerment. You know, this professor is essentially saying, if you don't think exactly the same way I do, then sit down and shut up. You are unworthy of being part of the conversation and incapable of thinking for yourself. This is the opposite of women's empowerment. When I think of women's empowerment, I think of President Trump's cabinet with more women elected to high-ranking positions than ever before in history. I think of women who attended the March for Life, who marched on behalf of the voiceless and the vulnerable. What I don't think about are those who claim to champion the rights of all women, except for those who are pro-life or conservative.
And I'm sure you and millions of other women were offended by that. And Hannah, 1 week before President Trump's State of the Union address, your colleague, Cabot Phillips, asked students at NYU what they thought of the president's speech. Again, this was before the State of the Union speech was delivered. Here's a shortened version of that.
What was your reaction to everything that was said?
I didn't watch it because I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
Quite racist at the very least, if not up there with most racist.
Yeah. Wow. It's already quickly climbing the scale. Some of the people said today that they thought his immigration stance and that he outlined last night was especially hateful.
Very offensive.
What do you think of it?
It's something that I wouldn't have expected to happen in, like, our lifetime.
It's offensive. It is crazy, but I'm not shocked by it, by what he's done in the past, so.
Pretty ugly. I believe what I'm hearing. about his rough nature and the hate that he probably said.
He told the Democrats the wall got 10 feet higher because they didn't stand up and give him applause at one point. What do you think of all that?
It's the behavior of someone who refuses to accept accountability for their failures.
The way he acts, you shouldn't be acting like that if you're the leader of the country, regardless of what party you're in. So that frustrates me a lot.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that was his State of the Union address.
Hopefully everything that he's outlined can be overturned by the public opinion.
Again, Hannah, that was 1 week before the State of the Union. Were you surprised by this? What does it say about students on campus in 2018?
Unfortunately, I was not surprised by this at all. Ironically, liberals pride themselves on being open-minded, but many of them are so quick to form their opinions before learning anything about the topic. And what's most outrageous about this is that college students at some of the top universities and colleges in the nation have no idea what or when the State of the Union address is. The State of the Union is probably one of the most important events of the entire year, where the president lays out our priorities for the future and the current state of our nation. But instead of learning important things like this, students are learning about toxic masculinity and feminist dance theory. So this is just the result of the echo chamber mentality we're seeing on so many college campuses.
Okay, Hannah Scherlacher, we appreciate you keeping them honest and exposing all this. And it's always good to catch up with you and the latest craziness on American college campuses. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.